My name is Samantha Hayes, I'm 35 years old, and I own one of the most luxurious hotels in downtown Chicago. Though, as you're about to hear, not everyone in my family knows that. Before I tell you how I ended up standing outside my own hotel, blocked by my brother while my father whispered that I was embarrassing the family, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from tonight? Because this story, my story, is about more than pride, wealth, or family name. It's about kindness, empathy, and how blindness of the heart can cost a person more than money ever could. The moment I'll never forget started on a cold Thursday evening in November. I just returned from a private business trip overseas, exhausted but proud. My hotel, the Hayes Grand, had just been voted one of the top luxury hotels in the United States. It was everything I'd worked for. Every chandelier, every marble floor, every golden handrail was a reflection of the years I spent climbing from a small-town waitress to a global hotelier. But as my black limousine stopped in front of the tall, glass-covered building, the kind that shimmered like liquid gold against the night sky, I saw something I didn't expect. My brother Daniel, standing by the entrance. He was dressed sharply, in one of those designer suits that scream, "I've made it." His hands were tucked into his pockets, his chin slightly raised. His smirk the same one I remembered from childhood, the smirk he always wore whenever he wanted to make me feel small. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said mockingly as I approached, pretending not to recognize me. "This entrance is reserved for guests only. I'm afraid this isn't a sightseeing spot." I blinked, unsure if I heard right. "Daniel, it's me." He laughed, loud enough for a few valet attendants to turn their heads. "Oh, I know who you are. But don't embarrass yourself, Sam. This place is way out of your league." I felt the sting of his words, not because they were true, but because I realized in that moment, my own brother still saw me as the broke little girl from years ago. The one who had holes in her shoes and begged for second-hand textbooks. Before I could respond, another figure walked up, tall, gray-haired and cold-eyed. My father, Richard Hayes. His presence was commanding, just like always, but his eyes carried that familiar look of quiet disappointment. "Sam," he said in a low voice, leaning close so no one else could hear, "please don't create a scene here. This hotel belongs to serious people. Don't embarrass the family." Those words, they hit harder than any insult. Because he didn't say them out of anger. He said them out of habit. The way he always did whenever he wanted me to remember my place. I looked at him for a long second, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. Felt pity. 4 years I'd wanted him to see me, not as the daughter who barely made it, but as the woman I'd become. But in that moment I realized, he couldn't. His pride wouldn't let him. Then, as if the universe itself had written the scene for a movie, my security escort appeared from behind the limousine. 2 men in dark suits, followed by the hotel's general manager. The moment the manager saw me, his expression changed instantly. He bowed his head slightly and said, "Good evening, Ms. Hayes. Welcome home." My brother's laughter stopped. My father froze. And I just stood there, silent, watching the shock form on their faces as they realized something they weren't ready to understand. I didn't need to say a word, because they were standing at the entrance of my building. The same building they had told me years ago that I'd never be successful enough to even walk into. As my security escort stepped forward and the manager ordered the valet to clear the way, Daniel whispered under his breath, What's going on?" I smiled faintly, holding his stunned gaze. "Family blindness costs dearly, Daniel. You might want to remember that." The hotel doors opened wide, golden light spilling out like sunrise, and I walked past them both without looking back. But before you think this story is just about revenge or pride, you need to know how I got there. Because this wasn't always my life. I wasn't born rich. I wasn't raised with luxury. I was raised with struggle, and a heart that refused to stop believing. Let me take you back to where it all began. When I was 10, my family lived in a small house in rural Illinois. My mother, Linda Hayes, worked double shifts at a diner, while my father ran a small construction business. My brother Daniel was always the golden child, confident, smart, and adored. My father used to tell everyone, "Daniel's going to be a CEO one day." But when it came to me, he'd just smile and say, "Sam's got a good heart. Maybe she'll teach someday." Back then, I didn't know what those words really meant. But as I grew, I learned. They meant he didn't see me as capable of more. I was quiet, bookish, and dreamed big. I wanted to build something that made people feel seen, the way I often didn't. When other girls talked about boyfriends, I talked about hotels. Not just buildings, sanctuaries. Places where kindness, comfort, and dignity weren't luxuries, but normal. But no one took me seriously. "Hotels are for rich people," my father said once. "You need money to make money, Sam. Not daydreams." Even Daniel laughed. "You, a hotel owner, please. You'd probably give away all your profits trying to help people." Maybe he was right, at least back then. Because I did want to help people. After high school, I got a job as a front desk clerk at a small motel on the outskirts of Chicago. It wasn't much, but it was where everything began. I worked nights, weekends, and holidays. I saved every penny. I learned how people felt when they entered a building. Nervous, tired, hopeful. I learned the power of a smile, the importance of respect, the beauty of empathy. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me more about life than any business school could. And little by little I climbed, from front desk to assistant manager, then to operations. I took online courses in hospitality, borrowed library books on business, and never stopped dreaming. There were times I cried quietly behind the reception desk, wondering if I'd ever make it out of that small motel. There were nights I couldn't afford dinner, so I'd survive on coffee and crackers. And through it all, not once did my family visit me. They said I was wasting my time. But something inside me refused to quit. Then came the turning point, the high before the next storm. I met Eleanor Grant, an older woman who checked into the motel one rainy evening. She was kind, soft-spoken, and elegant. What I didn't know then was that she was one of Chicago's most respected real estate investors. She watched me handle a power outage that night. Guests panicking, the system down, phones ringing non-stop, and somehow I kept everyone calm. I found candles, offered blankets, and made coffee for everyone in the lobby. When she checked out, she left me a note. "You have the heart of a leader, Samantha. Call me when you're ready to build something of your own." That note changed everything. Within 2 years, with her mentorship and a small investment, I started a boutique hotel business. Modest but full of soul. And from that little dream grew the Hayes Grand. But the success didn't erase the pain of being underestimated. And that's why standing outside my own hotel that night, hearing my brother and father laugh, hurt more than I expected. Because I realized, no matter how high I climbed, they'd never see me until life forced them to. And life, I knew, was about to do just that. Because while I walked into the lobby, my phone buzzed with a message from Eleanor. "They're trying to claim your property shares, aren't they? I told you, family blindness costs dearly. Be careful tonight." Froze. My heart raced as I turned to look back through the glass doors. My brother was on his phone, whispering urgently. My father's expression had changed, from confusion to something darker. That's when I realized, this wasn't just about pride. Something bigger was happening, something dangerous. And that was the night everything started to unravel. The moment I stepped into the lobby, I felt the familiar warmth of the golden lights gliding off the marble floors, the scent of lavender and oakwood drifting through the air. My scent, the one I'd personally chosen for the Hayes Grand. Guests walked by, chatting softly, waiters carried trays of champagne, and a soft jazz tune hummed from the grand piano. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. Yet that night it didn't feel like peace. Felt like the calm before a storm. Eleanor's message replayed in my mind like a siren. "They're trying to claim your property shares, aren't they? Be careful tonight." I slipped my phone into my coat pocket, forcing a smile as my assistant, Maya, approached. She was young, bright, and loyal, one of the few people I truly trusted. "Ms. Hayes," she greeted with a cheerful tone. "Welcome back. Everything's been running smoothly. Oh, and the board meeting with the investors is scheduled for Monday. Good, I said softly, glancing toward the entrance. Through the glass doors, I could still see my father and Daniel standing outside, talking intensely. Daniel was gesturing with his hands, angry, impatient. My father's face was pale. They had no idea I could see them. Maya, I said slowly, keep an eye on the security feed tonight. If my father or brother tries to enter, alert me immediately. Don't let them pass the front desk. Her smile faded. Is everything okay? I gave her a calm look. Let's just say, family business shouldn't mix with real business. She nodded, though I could see worry flicker in her eyes. As I made my way to the elevator, I caught my reflection in the polished glass wall. Composed, powerful. But inside my heart was thundering. Because if Eleanor was right, my brother and father weren't just here by coincidence. They were planning something, and I had a feeling I already knew what it was. Let me take you back a few months before that night. Daniel had been struggling with his own company, Hayes Construction. What used to be my father's pride had become a sinking ship. Mismanaged funds, bad investments, unpaid workers. It was falling apart. My father had poured his savings into trying to save it, and Daniel, ever arrogant, refused to admit fault. They'd both come to me for help once before. Sam, my father had said over dinner one evening, you have the money now. You could lend your brother some. We'll pay you back. I'd looked at them. The same two men who'd laughed when I told them I wanted to own hotels. The same ones who never visited me when I was struggling in that run-down motel. I'm sorry, Dad, I'd said carefully. But I don't lend money for businesses built on ego. Daniel had slammed his fork down. You're just jealous because we built something before you ever did. I'd smiled. Maybe. But at least I didn't build something that's sinking. That was the last time we'd spoken. So seeing them that night outside my hotel felt like déjà vu. They were back, and I could bet it wasn't for a family reunion. I rode the elevator to the top floor where my private suite was, a space I used for rest and meetings. The city glowed beneath me like a galaxy, each light a heartbeat. I sat by the window, thinking about how far I'd come. You know, people often think success feels like fireworks. But for me it felt like silence. The kind of silence that makes you wonder if you've gained everything or lost the things that mattered most. I missed my mother then. She'd passed away 5 years ago, before she could see what I'd become. She was the only one who ever believed in me. I could still hear her voice. Kindness isn't weakness, Sam. It's power the world doesn't understand yet. And that's what I'd built the Hayes Grand on, kindness. Every staff member was treated like family. I paid them well, gave scholarships to their children, and opened half the hotel's top floor to a foundation that helped single mothers find housing. That was my victory. But now that victory was being threatened by my own blood. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from an unknown number. You can't hide forever, Sam. The truth always finds its way to the surface. My fingers tightened around the phone. My stomach twisted. It wasn't Eleanor this time. I looked at the message again, my heartbeat spiking. The number was unlisted. No caller ID. And then the phone rang. Same number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. Who is this? A deep male voice replied. Confident. Dangerous. You have something that belongs to the Hayes family. I suggest you return it before your empire collapses. The line went dead. For a second I just sat there, frozen, staring at the phone. Then I quickly called Eleanor. Sam, she answered, her tone sharp. Are you safe? I think they're here, I whispered. My father and Daniel. But there's someone else, someone behind them. I suspected as much, Eleanor said grimly. Your brother signed over collateral that doesn't belong to him. Shares from your company, Sam. He's been trying to use them to secure a private loan. If he succeeds, you could lose controlling interest in the hotel. My breath caught. He forged my name. Yes, I warned him once, but he's desperate. And desperate people make dangerous choices. I got up from my seat, pacing the suite. Then I need to act fast. I'll call my attorney in the morning. Eleanor paused. No, dear. Tonight. You can't wait. I looked out the window again. The lights below seemed to flicker in rhythm with my pulse. Down at the entrance, 2 figures were still standing near the fountain. Daniel and my father. But now, they weren't alone. A black SUV had pulled up beside them, tinted windows, engine idling. A tall man stepped out, shook Daniel's hand, and passed him a brown envelope. Something about it made my stomach turn cold. Maya, I said, pressing the intercom. Send security footage from the front entrance to my laptop. Now. Yes, Ms. Hayes. Seconds later, the screen came to life. I zoomed in on Daniel's hand. The envelope was thick. He slipped it into his jacket. Then the tall man leaned close and whispered something to my father. My father nodded slowly. Then they all looked up, directly toward the camera. As if they knew I was watching. I stepped back from the screen. Oh my God, I breathed. Eleanor's voice came through the phone. Sam, what do you see? I swallowed hard. I think they're making a deal. And whatever it is, it involves my hotel. Eleanor went quiet for a moment. Then she said, Listen carefully, Samantha. Do not confront them tonight. You need evidence first. I'll have my legal team prepare documents to freeze any suspicious transfers. Do you understand? Yes. And Sam, her tone softened, don't lose your kindness over this. The world will always try to turn your heart cold when you rise. Don't let it. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I won't. The line clicked off. I turned back to the window one last time. My father and Daniel were gone. The SUV too. The city was quiet again, but not peaceful. I could feel it. Something was moving beneath the surface. I thought the night would end there. But just as I turned away, my sweet lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The room fell into darkness. And somewhere in the silence, I heard the faint click of my suite door unlocking. The lights went out so suddenly that for a split second, I thought it was another power surge. But then I remembered. The hotel's generators were state-of-the-art. Power outages didn't happen here. Not by accident. The hum of the city below was faint through the thick glass windows. The suite, usually a place of calm, now felt like a trap. My pulse quickened. I could hear my own breathing. Then the soft click again. The unmistakable sound of the lock sliding open. Froze my mind racing. Maya, I whispered, tapping the small earpiece on my collar. Do you copy? Static. No response. Maya, I said louder, but the line was dead. Someone had cut communications. That's when I knew. This wasn't random. Whoever had just entered wasn't a guest. They were coming for me. I moved silently to the corner table where my phone lay, the only light coming from the faint glow of the city outside. My fingers trembled slightly as I grabbed it and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light sliced through the darkness. And standing near the door was a silhouette. Butching. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the figure spoke. A deep voice I recognized instantly. Relax, Sam. It's just me. Daniel. My voice came out sharper than I expected. How did you get in here? He took a step forward, his face now visible in the dim light. Smug, confident, but with something colder in his eyes. Family privilege, he said with a smirk. Dad still has friends in security. And it's funny, when you act like you belong, people don't ask many questions. Clenched my jaw. What do you want, Daniel? He looked around the room as if admiring it. Nice place. Never thought my little sister would end up in a suite like this. His smile faded. Or own the entire building. So you do know, I said quietly. He shrugged. Let's just say your little secret didn't stay hidden for long. Word gets around, especially when your name's on $100 million contracts. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to stay calm. If you came here to congratulate me, I doubt you'd need to cut the power. He chuckled, a low sound that didn't reach his eyes. You always were too smart for your own good. No, I came here for business. I stepped back, watching him carefully. Business? Yes. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the same brown envelope I'd seen him take outside. This is your chance to help the family, Sam. You're sitting on an empire while Dad's company is collapsing. He gave his life to build that name. You could fix everything with one signature. He laid the envelope on the table between us. I didn't touch it. What's in it? Transfer papers, he said plainly. Just 30% of your hotel shares. Temporary until we stabilize our company. Then we'll return them. I laughed softly, bitterly. You really think I'm that naive? His smile vanished. It's family, Sam. Blood comes before business. I met his gaze. Funny. That rule never applied when I was sleeping in my car trying to build this place. Where was family then? His jaw tightened. Don't twist this. Dad's health is failing. He's under pressure. You could save him a world of humiliation. By handing over everything I built. I said sharply. No, Daniel. I worked for this. I earned it. Something in his expression shifted. From persuasion to anger. You've always been selfish, he hissed. Always playing the victim while the rest of us worked to carry the Hayes name. You think money gives you power, but without that name you'd still be nothing. I took a slow step toward him, my voice steady. Then why do you need me now? He didn't answer. Instead, he slammed the envelope onto the table so hard it echoed through the room. You'll regret this, he snapped. You think you're untouchable because you're rich? Because you've got some investors backing you. You have no idea what's coming, Sam. He turned and stormed toward the door. Daniel, I called out. He stopped, his hand on the handle. I don't hate you, I said softly. Despite everything. But one day you'll understand that kindness isn't weakness. It's the reason I survived. And it's the reason I'll still be standing when you fall. For a second his shoulders stiffened, just slightly, before he walked out and slammed the door behind him. The lights flickered back on. I exhaled slowly, my heart still pounding. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From the anger I'd been holding back for years. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the rain smear down the glass, thinking about my father. I wanted to believe Daniel was lying, that my father couldn't possibly be part of this. But deep down I knew better. When I was younger he used to tell me, in business, family comes first. But what he really meant was, as long as family obeys him. I remembered being 15 when he refused to sign my college application because he thought business school was a waste for a girl. I remembered him telling me to stay home, to learn to be supportive. And now, after everything I'd built, he still didn't see me. He saw an ATM in heels. The next morning I called Eleanor. She picked up instantly. I was waiting for your call. He came to my suite, I said. He had forged transfer papers. He wants 30%. She sighed heavily. I was afraid of that. You need to act fast, Sam. I've spoken to my legal team. We can issue an injunction to protect your shares. Do it, I said without hesitation. I will. But that's not all. Her tone turned grave. The man who delivered that envelope to your brother last night. We identified him. His name is Frank Donovan. He's an investor with a reputation for taking over family-run companies. Ruthless. Once he gets his foot in the door, he never leaves. Are you saying Daniel's selling them a piece of my hotel? I'm saying he already tried, Eleanor said quietly. But without your signature, the deal can't be finalized. That's why they need you, and why they'll try again. I swallowed hard. So what do I do? Stay alert. Protect yourself. And don't let emotions guide you. You may need to face your father soon. I nodded, though my chest tightened at the thought. By noon, the hotel was buzzing again. Guests laughing in the lobby, conference meetings filling the halls. The world moved on, unaware that a war was brewing behind those glass walls. Maya knocked on my office door. "Ms. Hayes, there's someone here to see you." "Who is it?" She hesitated. "Your father." Froze. For a moment the air felt heavy. I'd prepared for this, yet somehow I wasn't ready. "Send him in," I said quietly. The door opened and my father stepped inside. His presence filled the room as it always had. He looked older, more fragile, but his eyes still carried that same authority. "Sam," he began, his voice calm, almost tender. "You look well." I forced a polite smile. "What brings you here, Dad?" He took a slow breath. "Daniel told me what happened last night. He was out of line. But you have to understand. He's under enormous pressure." I leaned back in my chair. "So you sent him?" He hesitated. "I asked him to talk to you. To make you see reason." "Reason?" I repeated softly. "You mean give you my company?" He frowned. "It's not yours alone, Samantha. Or family. Everything you have, the name, the opportunities, came from me." I met his gaze steadily. "No, Dad. Everything I have came from what you didn't give me. The rejection, the disbelief, the silence. That's what built this." For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue, but then his expression hardened. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You think this money makes you powerful. Doesn't. One signature from the right person and this entire empire can crumble." I rose slowly from my chair. "Then maybe it's time I find out who's trying to make it crumble." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Be careful who you trust, Sam," he said quietly. "Especially those who claim to be on your side." And with that he walked out. I stood there, my pulse still racing, his words echoing in my mind. What did he mean by that? Before I could think it through, Maya rushed in, pale and shaking. "Ms. Hayes," she gasped. "You need to come downstairs. Right now." "What's wrong?" Her voice trembled. "It's the vault, ma'am. Someone's broken in." I felt the blood drain from my face. "The vault?" I whispered. She nodded. "The one that holds all the hotel's property deeds and contracts." I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my coat and ran for the elevator. Heart pounding, adrenaline burning. Because if what I feared was true, then this wasn't just about control anymore. It was about survival. The elevator seemed to crawl, each floor number blinking slower than the last, as if mocking the pounding rhythm in my chest. My palms were slick, my throat dry, and every possible worst-case scenario rushed through my mind. Someone had broken into the Hayes Grand's private vault, the secured room that held the legal backbone of everything I'd built. Deeds, partnership agreements, investor records, even the original ownership documents signed under my name. If anyone tampered with those, they could rewrite my story and steal my life's work right from under me. When the elevator doors slid open, the scene that greeted me looked like something out of a heist movie. The hallway lights near the vault flickered weakly. 2 security guards stood outside the thick metal door, their faces tense. My head of security, Mr. Cole, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, met me halfway. "Ms. Hayes," he said in a low, grim tone. "You need to see this." He tapped his badge on the digital pad. The vault door unlocked with a heavy hiss, and as it swung open, my heart stopped. The metal cabinets inside were pried open. Papers scattered across the floor. Files torn apart. But the strangest part. There was no sign of forced entry. Whoever did this had access. "Where's the footage?" asked sharply. Cole gestured to one of the guards. "We're reviewing it now, ma'am. But the feed from this corridor was wiped clean. Everything between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. is missing." I took a slow breath, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. "That's not possible. The system's encrypted. You'd need top-level credentials to access that." Cole nodded gravely. "Exactly." My stomach twisted. Only 5 people had that level of clearance. Me, Cole, Maya, the IT director, and my father. "Check the logs," I said firmly. I want to know exactly who entered this room and when. Yes, ma'am. I crouched down and picked up one of the scattered documents. It was a copy of my hotel's land deed, the one registered in my name. But the bottom signature line had been neatly sliced away. Someone had cut out my signature. I felt dizzy, my mind spinning with questions and fears. Was it Daniel, my father? Or had they sent someone else to do their dirty work? Cole's radio crackled. Sir, we've got something on the east stairwell cam. About 3:47 a.m. someone in a black coat and cap exiting through the service door. Cole turned to me. Do you want to see it? Yes, I said immediately. We rushed to the monitoring room. The air was tense, the low hum of screens filling the silence. On one of the monitors, the footage played, grainy but clear enough. A tall figure in a long coat walked swiftly down the dimly lit stairwell, head down, gloves on. I couldn't see the face, but when they looked up briefly toward the camera, just before disappearing through the exit, I saw something flash. A gold ring. A ring engraved with the Hayes family crest. My father's ring. I felt the air leave my lungs. Pause it. Cole froze the frame. My hands trembled slightly as I leaned closer to the screen. That ring, I whispered. Zoom in. He did. And there it was, unmistakable, the curved H and crest design that had been passed down through generations. My father wore it every day of his life. Cole looked at me carefully. Do you want to press charges, Ms. Hayes? I shook my head slowly, swallowing hard. Not yet. I want to understand why first. He hesitated. Ma'am, if someone's stealing from you. I said not yet, I repeated, my voice firmer this time. Cole nodded and stepped aside. I turned away from the screens, my mind racing. My father had been in my office barely an hour before the vault was found open. He'd warned me to be careful who I trust. Was that a threat? Or a warning? I went back to my office and shut the door. The sound of it clicking shut echoed like a verdict. I sank into my chair, buried my face in my hands, and let out a long, shaky breath. How had it come to this? The same man who once carried me on his shoulders when I was little, who told me bedtime stories about bravery and legacy, was now stealing from me in the dark. Well, something didn't add up. My father wasn't ruthless like Daniel. Not when it came to family. There had to be more to this. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. I heard about the break-in. Are you safe? I typed back quickly. Yes, but it's bad. The vault was opened using high-level access. The footage shows my father's ring. Her reply came almost instantly. Be careful, Sam. Donovan's people are manipulating your family. I've seen it before. If your father's involved, it's because someone has him cornered. I stared at her words. Cornered. That explained everything. If Donovan had tied my father's debts to Hayes Construction, he could be using him as leverage, forcing him to act against me. I needed proof. That evening I went down to the archives myself, insisting everyone else clear the room. I combed through the remaining documents, my hands moving fast, eyes scanning for anything out of place. Then, found it. A small, cream-colored folder tucked behind a stack of old financial reports. No label. I opened it carefully and froze. Inside were photocopies of checks, loan documents, and correspondence between Daniel and Frank Donovan. Each one signed under Hayes Enterprises, my father's company, but several used the Hayes Grand's name as collateral. My hotel, my company, without my knowledge. And worse, my father had co-signed the loan. Oh my God, I whispered. If Donovan decided to call in that debt, he could legally seize parts of my business, even though I never agreed to it. I pressed my hands to my face, tears of frustration burning behind my eyes. They'd used my name, my success, the one thing they'd mocked me for, they were now trying to steal. But as I gathered the documents to take upstairs, I heard footsteps echoing in the corridor outside. Low, heavy, froze. The lights above flickered again. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Then a low, familiar voice spoke. You shouldn't have come down here alone, Sam. I turned slowly, clutching the folder to my chest. It was my father. He stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, a mixture of sadness, anger, and something else. Dad, I whispered, my heart racing. Why did you do it? Why steal from me? He sighed deeply, stepping closer. You wouldn't understand. I did what I had to do for this family. This isn't for the family, I said sharply. This is for Daniel. For his mistakes. He didn't deny it. He's my son. My responsibility. And I'm not. Snap. I worked for this, Dad. Every sleepless night, every risk, every dollar. You could have just asked me for help. His voice trembled, but his eyes stayed cold. I couldn't. You would have said no. I felt my chest tighten. So you stole from me instead. He said nothing. For a long, painful moment, we just stood there. Father and daughter, years of silence and misunderstanding hanging between us. Then he finally spoke, his tone lower now. You don't know what Donovan's capable of, Sam. He owns people. He destroys them. I thought I could protect you by keeping you out of it. By breaking into my vault. He took a step closer, his eyes suddenly desperate. You have to trust me. Please. Give Daniel what he needs, and this will all end. I shook my head. No, Dad. This ends when I end it. His jaw clenched, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, fear. Not of me, but of someone else. Before I could ask, a sharp voice came from behind him. Well, well, the voice drawled, echoing off the marble walls. Looks like the family meeting started without me. I looked past my father, and my blood ran cold. Frank Donovan stepped into the room. Tall, dark suit, eyes like polished glass. He smiled slowly, his presence filling the space like poison. Ms. Hayes, he said smoothly, we finally meet. My father stepped aside, his face pale. I clutched the folder tighter, heart pounding as Donovan's gaze landed on it. That, he said softly, belongs to me. And just like that I realized the storm had arrived. Frank Donovan didn't walk into a room. He claimed it. His presence bent the air, heavy and deliberate, like a man used to watching others bend first. The fluorescent lights above hummed faintly as he stepped closer. His polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. Behind him, two men in tailored suits stood guard near the doorway, their postures too rigid to be anything other than muscle. My father shifted uneasily beside me, eyes flicking between Donovan and the folder in my hands. He looked smaller suddenly. Not the towering man I'd grown up with, but someone cornered, caught in a web he couldn't escape. Frank, I said, forcing calm into my voice. If you came here to threaten me, you're wasting your time. Donovan chuckled softly. Threaten you? Oh no, Ms. Hayes. I'm here to negotiate. He glanced at my father. Though I'm disappointed in you, Charles. I asked you to keep her out of this. My father's jaw tightened. She wasn't supposed to find out. Yet here we are. Donovan's tone was mild, but his eyes gleamed. Seems your daughter has inherited your stubbornness, and your timing. I took a step forward, ignoring the tremor in my chest. You forged my signature. You used my hotel as collateral for Daniel's debts. That's fraud, Mr. Donovan. You don't negotiate with people you've already stolen from. His smile didn't fade. Fraud. He shrugged lightly. Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as a creative partnership. Besides, your father agreed to the arrangement. The Hayes family stands together, doesn't it? I glared at my father. Did you really sign off on this? He didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. Donovan spread his hands. Let's be realistic, Samantha. The documents are valid. If you make this public, the press will spin it as family infighting. Investors will panic, your board will lose faith, and your beloved Hayes Grand will crumble under scrutiny. You'll lose everything trying to prove you're right. I didn't flinch. You don't know what I'm capable of. Oh, I think I do. He leaned closer, voice dropping. You're a brilliant woman, Ms. Hayes. Unrelenting. But everyone has a pressure point. For you, it's loyalty. His gaze flicked to my father. And he's the one holding the detonator. The silence that followed was unbearable. My father looked at me with pleading eyes. Sam, please. Just let this go. It's not worth it. I stared at him, heartbreaking. You're asking me to hand over everything I built to save him? He swallowed hard. He'll destroy Daniel if I don't comply. Then maybe Daniel needs to face what he's done, I said bitterly. Donovan's smirk returned. Touching. But it's not just Daniel on the line anymore. Your father's company is tied into this too. If I pull one thread, I take him down along with you. I forced my breathing steady. So what do you want? Simple, he said smoothly. Sign over controlling interest in the Hayes Grand to me. In return, your father's debts vanish, and your family walks away clean. I laughed, a hollow, disbelieving sound. You think I'm stupid enough to sign my life away? He tilted his head, almost admiringly. Not stupid, just sentimental. Which is worse. Then he nodded to his men. One of them pulled out a sleek black folder from his coat and placed it on the nearest table. Inside was a pre-drafted transfer agreement, my name already typed neatly at the bottom. My father looked like he was about to collapse. Sam, please, don't make this harder. I felt something in me harden like glass cooling into stone. No, I said quietly. You made it hard when you lied to me. Donovan's expression shifted. Faint irritation quickly masked. You have until tomorrow morning, he said coolly. Either you sign or I dismantle your empire piece by piece. I own your debt. I own your father's debt. You'll find I'm a very patient man, but not a merciful one. He turned and started for the door. Frank, I called out suddenly. He paused, glancing back with a faint smirk. I lifted the cream folder I'd found earlier. You might own the debts, but I own the proof. Every document, every transaction you and Daniel forged. If I go public, I won't just take you down. I'll take the entire Donovan group with you. His smirk vanished for the first time. Do you think anyone will believe a story from a desperate heiress covering her family's crimes? He said, but there was a flicker of unease now. I met his eyes. I think the right evidence speaks louder than bloodlines. For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. Then Donovan's lips curled slightly, but his voice dropped to a warning whisper. You've made your move, Ms. Hayes. Let's see if you can live with the consequences. He turned sharply, motioning to his men, and they disappeared into the corridor. As soon as he was gone, I turned to my father. Tell me everything, I demanded. Right now. He sank into the chair, rubbing his temples. It started months ago. After Daniel's third failed investment. He borrowed money from Donovan to buy that Arizona ranch, the one your company was backing as a tourism venture. When the project collapsed, Donovan demanded repayment. I tried to help him, Sam, but he dragged you into it, I finished bitterly. My father nodded. He said if I didn't sign, Donovan would ruin Daniel. I thought I could fix it quietly. By betraying me. He looked up, eyes wet. By protecting you from what's coming. What's coming? Before he could answer, the lights flickered again. Cole's voice buzzed faintly from my security intercom. Ms. Hayes, you need to see this. Right now. I rushed upstairs, my father trailing behind. In the control room, Cole stood stiffly before a monitor. On the screen was a live news broadcast. Breaking news ticker flashing at the bottom. Hayes Grand Hotel under investigation. Forged documents. Financial misconduct linked to CEO. And beneath the headline, my photo. A reporter's voice echoed through the speakers. Anonymous sources close to Hayes Enterprises have provided evidence suggesting Samantha Hayes falsified ownership records and used company funds for personal gain. Federal investigators have been notified. I felt my blood run cold. Donovan hadn't waited until morning. He'd struck first. And as I watched my reputation crumble on live television, one thought cut through the chaos like lightning. If he wanted a war, he just got one. The first night of the media storm felt endless. Every channel, every feed, every blog in New York seemed to have my name splashed across it. Samantha Hayes, the fraudulent heiress, the spoiled CEO, the woman who stole from her own family. By sunrise, half my board members had called me. The other half refused to pick up. I sat in my office on the 25th floor of the Hayes Grand, staring at the skyline through floor-to-ceiling glass. The city looked calm, almost mocking, as if unaware that my world was falling apart. Cole stood at the doorway, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, ma'am. Understand. We'll arrange the meeting for noon," he said, then lowered his voice. "She's holding up." He hung up and turned to me. "Eleanor's on her way. She says not to make any public statements yet." I nodded silently. My phone kept vibrating. Reporters, board members, investors, all demanding an explanation I couldn't yet give. My father hadn't come back since the previous night. Neither had Daniel. That alone spoke volumes. Maya knocked gently on the door, her face pale. "Ms. Hayes." "There are news vans outside the main entrance. And the staff are scared. Some guests have started checking out." I closed my eyes for a moment, pressing my fingertips against my temple. Course they were. No one wanted to stay in a hotel accused of being a front for fraud. "Tell the staff to stay calm," I said finally. "No one loses their job. No one leaves. We'll handle this." She hesitated. "Ms. Hayes, with all due respect, how? Donovan controls the narrative. He has evidence, or at least something that looks like evidence." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "Then we'll find the truth he's hiding." When Eleanor arrived that afternoon, she swept into the office like a gust of clean air, composed, sharp, unshakable. Her assistant followed behind, arms full of files. "Sam," she said, closing the door, "I've reviewed the broadcast materials. The evidence they leaked came from documents registered under a dummy corporation. The signatures are forged, and we've already traced part of the money trail back to Donovan's offshore accounts." I sat up straighter. "You can prove that." "Not yet. But we can get there." She leaned across my desk, her voice low. "Listen to me. He's trying to bury you under public pressure before we can expose him legally. He knows once the court gets involved, his entire operation will unravel." I exhaled, tension shaking through me. "So what do? We buy time. We stop reacting. From this moment on, no more public silence, but no anger either. We respond with facts, dignity, and calm." Her assistant handed her a printed statement. "This is what you'll say to the press at 5 o'clock. I read the first line aloud. "I have built my company on truth, fairness, and integrity. I will not be destroyed by lies." It was strong, simple, and it sounded exactly like me. I nodded slowly. "Okay. Let's do it." By the time evening came, the hotel's front entrance looked like a battlefield. Cameras flashing, microphones outstretched, voices shouting my name. Cole and his security team formed a tight barrier as I stepped outside, the cool November air biting against my cheeks. Reporters surged forward. "Ms. Hayes, did you falsify company documents? Is it true you forged your family's signatures? Will you be stepping down as CEO?" I lifted my chin, holding the printed statement firmly in my hand. "My name is Samantha Hayes," I began, my voice steady, echoing across the courtyard. "I have spent the last decade building this hotel and every company attached to it. The recent allegations are false and malicious. We are cooperating fully with investigators, and have reason to believe the evidence being circulated was fabricated by individuals with a personal vendetta against me." Flashes erupted like lightning. "I am not a thief," I continued. "I am not a liar. And I am not afraid. The truth will come to light, sooner than they expect. I turned and walked back into the building, the noise fading behind me. Inside, Maya looked at me with something close to awe. You didn't even flinch. I've faced worse than cameras, I said softly. But as I stepped into the elevator, I felt the exhaustion settle deep in my bones. Hours later, when the chaos had died down, Cole entered my office again, holding a small flash drive. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "this just came from one of our cleaning staff. A woman named Rosa. She said she found it inside one of the VIP suites on the 20th floor. Room 2008. He frowned. "That room's been empty for a week." "That's what I thought," Cole said. "But the keycard records show someone used a master code to enter it at midnight. No staff, no guests. Who checked in last?" He hesitated. "Your brother." My stomach dropped. Cole handed me the drive. "You should see what's on it." He plugged it into the computer, and a video file appeared. Click play. The grainy footage showed Daniel sitting in that very suite, talking to Donovan. The audio was faint but clear enough to make out pieces. Daniel: "I told you she'd find out eventually." Donovan: "Then you'll do as I said. The minute the story breaks, you'll go on record. Claim she paid you to take the blame. That'll finish her." Daniel: "And my cut?" Donovan: "You'll get it when she's out of the picture." My hands trembled. He'd betrayed me. Again. My own brother. The same man I'd once defended to the world. Cole clenched his jaw. "Should I forward this to Eleanor?" "Not yet," I said quietly. "If we expose it now, Donovan will twist it before we can tie it to him. So what's the plan?" I looked at the screen, at Daniel's face frozen mid-sentence. "The plan," I said, voice calm but sharp as steel, "is to let them think they've won. We'll set our own trap, one they'll walk right into." The next morning I called Daniel. He didn't answer at first, but I kept calling until he picked up. "What do you want, Sam?" he said bitterly. "To talk," I said softly. "Meet me at the lake house tonight. Just us. No lawyers, no press. I want to fix this before it goes too far." There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Fine. But if this is a trick..." "It's not," I interrupted. "It's family." When the line went dead, I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. Cole looked at me uneasy. "Ma'am, what exactly are you planning?" I turned to him slowly. "The same thing they did to me." He frowned. "Meaning?" I met his eyes. "I'm going to record everything." That night, the lake house sat silent under the moonlight, the same one I hadn't visited in years. Its windows reflected the water like eyes watching from the dark. I parked outside, slipping the tiny recording device Eleanor had sent me into my coat pocket. Cole waited nearby in an unmarked car, ready in case things turned ugly. When I stepped inside, Daniel was already there, leaning against the fireplace, hands in his pockets. He looked tired, older, and angrier than I'd ever seen him. "Nice place," he said dryly. "Still pretending everything's perfect." "I stopped pretending the day you sold me out," I said evenly. He looked away. "You don't get it, Sam. You have everything. Dad chose you, the world chose you. I just wanted something of my own. So you let Donovan use you as a pawn." He glared. "He offered me a way out. You would have done the same." "No," I said quietly. "I would have helped you if you'd just asked." Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. But before I could say another word, the floorboards creaked behind me. I turned sharply. And there he was. Frank Donovan standing in the doorway, a faint smile cutting through the shadows. "Well," he said softly, clapping once. "Isn't this a lovely family reunion?" My pulse thundered. He wasn't supposed to be here. Daniel stepped back, uncertain. "You said..." Donovan cut him off with a raised hand. "Plans change. Especially when people start making deals behind my back." He looked at me. "You really thought you could outsmart me, didn't you, Ms. Hayes?" I didn't move. "You came all this way for another threat?" He smiled wider. No. I came to finish what you started. And then before I could react, the lights went out. A loud crash echoed through the room. And the lake house fell into darkness. When the lights went out, the sound of my heartbeat was the loudest thing in the room. I could smell burning, the faint sting of dust and hot wires. And then came the sound of movement. Quick, heavy, too close. Daniel! I shouted into the dark. Where are you? No answer. Only footsteps circling slowly, deliberately. Donovan, I said, my voice trembling but strong. If you think scaring me will make me sign anything, you're wrong. A low chuckle drifted from the shadows. You still don't get it, do you? Something metallic scraped against the floor. Maybe a chair. Maybe a weapon. You think this is about a signature? Donovan's voice was closer now, almost beside my ear. It's about power. You have it. I want it. And power, Ms. Hayes, is rarely taken politely. I moved backward until my shoulder hit the wall. My hand slipped into my coat pocket and pressed the small recording device. A single red light blinked faintly, still on, still recording. Where's my brother? I demanded. Your brother made his choice, Donovan said softly. He knew the price of betrayal. The faintest beam of moonlight spilled through a window as the clouds shifted, and I saw him. Donovan stood by the fireplace, tall and composed, his coat unbuttoned. Behind him, Daniel lay slumped against the wall, unconscious but breathing. A bruise darkened his jaw. Daniel! I started forward, but Donovan raised a hand. Don't. He'll live if you cooperate. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that crawled under my skin. Here's how this goes, Ms. Hayes. You'll call your lawyer. You'll transfer every remaining share of the Hayes Grand to my holding company. You'll then issue a public apology admitting to fraud and step down from your position. In return, he smiled thinly, your father and brother stay out of prison. I stared at him, shaking with fury. You think you can blackmail me into destroying everything I built? He tilted his head. I already have. And then, headlights cut across the windows. Donovan froze. The distant hum of engines grew louder. 3 black SUVs rolled into the driveway. He turned sharply toward the door, confused. What? Before he could finish, the front door burst open. FBI! Step away from her. The living room filled with blinding light and shouting voices. Agents swarmed in, weapons raised. Donovan spun toward me, his calm finally cracking. What did you do? I met his eyes. I pressed record. He looked down. The tiny blinking red light reflected faintly on the floor between us. I'd streamed the entire conversation live to Eleanor's secure server the moment it started. Every word, every threat, every confession. As the agents surrounded him, Donovan lunged, desperate, furious, but they pinned him to the ground in seconds. Papers scattered from his coat pocket, spilling across the floor. Forged contracts, payment logs, fake signatures. Evidence of everything. Daniel groaned, lifting his head weakly. I ran to him, helping him sit up. Sam, he mumbled, dazed. I didn't mean it to go this far. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You almost destroyed everything, Daniel. But it's over now. He looked away, shame clouding his face. No, it's not. Not for me. The agents pulled Donovan upright, handcuffed and silent. As they led him toward the door, he turned one last time. His voice low, venomous. This isn't victory, Ms. Hayes. This is mercy. And mercy runs out. I didn't answer. I just watched as the night swallowed him. Hours later, the house was quiet again. Emergency lights flickered softly against the walls, and dawn began to creep through the broken windows. Eleanor arrived just as the last of the agents left. She hugged me tightly, then pulled back with a proud smile. You did it, she said. You turned his own game against him. I nodded, exhausted. Barely. She shook her head. No, Sam. You fought with grace. You didn't scream, you didn't run. You listened, you waited, and then you struck. I looked out at the lake, still and silver under the early light. What happens now? Donovan will face multiple charges: fraud, blackmail, conspiracy. Your father and Daniel will testify, and your name will be cleared. And the Hayes grand. She smiled faintly. Still yours. Always was. I let out a long breath. I don't know if I feel relieved. Or just empty. Eleanor's expression softened. That's what happens when you survive betrayal. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like breathing again after drowning. The next day, I stood in the grand lobby of my hotel. The press had turned from accusation to admiration overnight. Hayes exposes billion-dollar fraud ring. CEO's secret recording topples corrupt investor. But the applause didn't matter to me. What mattered was the quiet, the kind that comes when a storm finally ends. My father walked in slowly, leaning on a cane. He looked older, worn by guilt. Daniel followed behind him, silent. I saw the news, my father said softly. You saved us, even after everything. I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't do it to save you, Dad. I did it to save myself. The part of me Mom would still recognize. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. She'd be proud of you. Daniel stepped closer, his voice trembling. Sorry. I don't deserve forgiveness, but... I raised a hand gently. You're right. Don't. But you're still my brother. So you'll make it right. Not with words but with actions. I'll let you rebuild what you broke. From the bottom up. He swallowed hard and nodded. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I stood on the rooftop terrace, the same place my journey began. The city stretched endlessly below me, glowing gold against the dusk. Cole approached quietly. Security sweeps complete, ma'am. No more surprises. Good, I said, a faint smile touching my lips. I've had enough surprises to last a lifetime. He hesitated. If you don't mind me asking, what are you going to do now? I looked out over the city. Keep building. But this time not just hotels. I want to build people, the way no one ever built me. He nodded respectfully, then stepped back, leaving me alone with the skyline. The wind lifted gently, carrying with it the soft hum of traffic, laughter, life. And for the first time in years I let myself feel it, peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from wealth or power, but from finally knowing who you are, and who you'll never let control your story again. Because family blindness had cost us dearly. But for me it had also given me sight.